you're a tired parent who feels stuck in survival mode, this episode will show you how small mind shifts can calm conflict, reset your nervous system, and make home feel lighter. You'll hear how the brain reacts under stress and how to start responding with more intention, compassion, and energy for the life you actually want. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy. Today we have a special guest, Mitch Weisburgh. He is an educator, author, and founder of Mind Shifting with Mitch, a framework for building resourcefulness, resilience, and collaboration in individuals and organizations. Drawing on neuroscience and decades of experience with leaders and educators, he helps people rethink how they approach change and challenge. Mitch hosts Mind Shifting Mondays with Mitch and the Mind Shifting with Mitch TV series, blending science, storytelling, and humanity to offer practical tools for working with greater calm, clarity, and cooperation. Really excited to have you on the show, Mitch. Thank you for coming on.
Kendra, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I feel a little bit out of place because, you're focused on family, and I was called the worst parent in the history of mankind. I'm not sure
Quite the
I should be
title.
the person who's on your podcast.
I think you have plenty that we can glean regardless of that. And I'm very curious about who gave you that title and the story behind that.
It was our daughter, and she was about 14 or 15.
Hmm.
I worked at home at this point of her life. I go downstairs at about 4:45, and her name is Rosie. So I said, Rosie, you have a piano lesson at 5:30, and I know you have a practice. So why don't you practice a little bit? And as only a 14-year-old girl, it's like, Daddy, I'm really old enough to understand when I should practice and when I shouldn't practice. And I'm in the middle of watching a TV show. So you just go back upstairs and leave me alone. I go back upstairs at 5:15. It's time to leave for her piano lesson. I go downstairs, and it's like, so Rosie, it's 5:15. It's time to go to piano. She says, Daddy, I can't believe you did this. You knew I was watching TV. You know the programs end at 5 o'clock. It's now 5:15. I'm in the middle of another show that I don't want to stop. So not only am I going to be late for my lesson because I don't want to stop before 5:30, but I didn't practice. You should have been down here at 5 o'clock to remind me to stop watching TV. You are the worst parent in the history of mankind.
You can never win, right?
You can never win.
I'm confident I've been called those titles.
That's part of parenting.
Oh, absolutely. When you said the age right away, I know. Right now I have 2 teenagers and 1 exchange student. So really 3 teens and 1 almost there. I'm getting it from all sorts of fun angles. But
you mentioned exchange students. That's really been a passion of ours. So where's your exchange student from?
This one's from Denmark. He's our 4th one. And we're going to next year. We love it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so I was a volunteer for AFS, which is one of the exchange programs. And I actually was an exchange student when I was in high school. I went to Bolivia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so we had 8 students for either a semester or a year, plus over a dozen students, somewhere between 3 days and 2 months.
It's so fun.
It really is. It really is.
So tell me a little bit about why you love mind shifting and how you got in this space. I'm very curious.
Yeah. I've been involved with education since around 2001, specifically education technology. I got into education technology because I felt, something, our education system is not meeting the needs of society, not meeting the needs of kids, but technology could be the thing that allows us to give every kid a chance to live a great life.
Uh-huh.
My background was in technology and instructional design, and I felt this is a turning point. And then lo and behold, like around 2017, 2018, I'm like, I've been doing this for 16 years and we're not training kids to be good adults. We're not really preparing them. Something's wrong here. About that time, I received an invitation to talk to undergraduates about education technology. I was like, something, I'm not going to do that. Education technology hasn't had the effect that I wanted. What kids really need to understand is what are the mindsets that allow them to make sense of situations and then be successful and handle them with equanimity. And so at the time I called it sense making. If I just wrote back and said, I don't really want to talk about education technology. I don't think it really is going to help the kids that much. But let me talk to them about sense making, how successful people learn how to assess a situation, stay with their plan, work with others in order to be successful. And we went back and forth because they started off, well, why don't you teach it for a semester? And I'm like, I don't think I want to teach this for a semester, but it ended up being a 2-day workshop. You've probably done this also where you see a problem, you see how it should be solved, you come up with something, and then lo and behold, somebody says, okay, go ahead and do it. It's how am I going to do this? I've never taught this before. So I had 6 months and I read like 11 books on different topics that all have to do with different ways that we make decisions. Economics is a way of making decisions, psychology, neuroscience, coaching, teaching and pedagogy, the systems design, all these, I looked at all these different areas and it just seemed everybody was talking about their one discipline. Nobody seemed to be pulling it all together. And I found three different threads. One is how do you combat the fact that our own brains mess us up and sabotage us so often? How do you realize it when that's happening to you? How do you get out of it? How do you stay in a resourceful frame of mind? I call that resourcefulness. The second part of it is how do we assess situations when generally we go into a situation and we assume there's one right way of doing something, that anybody who disagrees with our one right way is wrong. We're going to do it and it's going to solve the problem. And none of those tend to work. How many times is there a real problem that the first thing we do completely solves the problem? Never.
Right.
So I called that resilience. And then the third is that no matter what we do, we're going to be doing it with other people. Generally, when we're working with other people and they disagree with us or they get in our way or they're not doing what we think that they should do, or we don't like them or we're fighting with them, we get into this judgment frame of mind and we end up being divisive and not moving forward. So how do you get into a frame of mind so that even when people disagree with you, even when they get in your way, even when they're competing with you, you can still find ways to work with them and move forward? And so I call that conflict and collaboration. Pulled those three elements together and taught the 2-day workshop. And at the end of the 2 days, the kids stood up and cheered. And these are skills that are learnable, teachable, and we're not teaching the kids how to do this on their own. That was in 2018. Since then, I've moved from education itself to what I now call mind shifting, which is around resourcefulness, resilience, and conflict and collaboration.
So that's the whole breakdown of the mind shifting. I love hearing that background and the story, how you got there, why it's important to you, and when you can break it down in ways that we can really conceptualize. So if you wouldn't mind talking to us about that right now, you did a little bit already, but let's go into resourcefulness. For example, a lot of us are parents struggling. Maybe our kids are in the middle of hating us or we're just feeling like
No,
failures.
that would never happen, right?
Never
Never,
happen.
never. Other than that one instance, my kids did everything I ever told them to do.
Yes, absolutely.
Would,
Well, then we'll
right.
definitely have to have you on more. Okay. So tell us about that, though, resourcefulness. How do we make some of those mind shifts in that step when it comes to parenting? And there's a lot of animosity, frustration. We're just trying to help our kids and they are just not having it.
So I would say that fits into the conflict and collaboration part, which is
Okay.
still built on the resourcefulness part. The resourcefulness part is how do you work with your own brain?
Okay.
An example of that is I say to people, whenever you are sure of something, it's probably a sign that you're in your lizard brain, your survival brain. Because if you're in your resourceful brain, you're never really sure of something. You're like curious, you're exploratory. The first step is to be aware, like, oh my gosh, I can't do this, or I know this is the way to do this, or I know this person is wrong, is to have that self-awareness or metacognition to say, wait, that's just a sign that I'm in my limbic brain or lizard brain, looking at things as binary. How do I get curious about that? In the book, Stop Your Brain from Sabotaging Your Happiness and Success, and the course based on the book, one of the earliest exercises we do is called Perhaps I Can't. Because if you're sure that you can't do something, then somebody telling you or you saying to yourself, I know I can do it. What am I talking about? That just causes more of an argument, right? You say that to your kid, like, I know you can do this. saying, no, I just told you I can't do this. Why are you pressuring me?
Yeah.
But if you can get the other person or yourself to say to yourself, perhaps I can, that opens things up. In the exercise, we have people think about what's something that you can't do. And this one person was, I know I can't get my PhD. The next step was, well, okay, how do you know that you can't do it? I just have this feeling or that I have, it's like I'm talking to myself and I can't do it. So, okay, when your brain says to you, I can't do this, what if you responded to that voice with just, perhaps I can? Why don't you try that? Now think about getting your PhD. You hear that voice saying, I can't do it. Now say to yourself, perhaps I can. What happens? And I'd say more than three-quarters of the people who do that, all of a sudden they start feeling lighter. It's like, oh, maybe I can't do it now, but maybe with a little bit of work, maybe I can get the first thing done. Maybe I can talk to somebody else who's done it. Your brain can't help but start coming up with ways that you might be able to do it. The first step is to be aware that, something, I'm in my limbic brain, I'm in my survival brain. I want to open myself up. So perhaps I can. And then stay in that perhaps I can until you have a few different alternatives. Then you can choose from one of those alternatives to what you're going to be doing next. If you say to your child, perhaps you can, that'll sometimes work. But very often your child's going to pick up that you're judging me, you're attacking me. So in that technique, one of the key things there is to try to get the other person to say that to themselves. You're sure that you can't do this, and you may be right. Do you have this voice that's telling you can't do it when you think about doing it? Why don't we just try something? When you hear that voice, why don't you respond to the voice? Perhaps I can. So you get them to say it to themselves, and it's much more powerful than us saying it to the other person.
I like that. I've done that on some level before, and it definitely helps if you're not just lecturing and saying all the things that get them to. Do you have a personal example of doing this, whether in parenting or just personal life, where you did it to yourself?
Well, it's hard for me now because I've been doing the perhaps I can for 8 years, so I don't even think about it. But the mind shifting in general, I have a cold. Yesterday it was a lot worse. And what had happened was that we're down in Washington, D.C., and we were taking our grandson, who was 5 years old, to see some carolers. And in traveling from New York to Washington, I'm thinking, oh, Washington's always warmer than New York. I don't need to bring a coat. So I didn't bring a coat. And it's 25, 27 degrees down here. Are you US or Canada?
Yeah, US.
All right. So yeah, 25, 27 degrees or -3 Celsius for the rest of the world.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm out, in the cold in, 27-degree weather. And of course I catch cold. And my wife is like, you always do this. Are you finally going to learn? The easiest thing to do is to just strike back. She's challenging me. But it's like, something, I messed up. And so it's no big deal. Maybe I would have preferred she express it a little softer, but
Right.
she's right. I did mess up. And, something maybe I can learn. That's an example of mind shifting really affecting me.
I'm thinking of ones, even simple ones that we do to ourselves, or clients might have said. For me, it's something simple like, "Oh, I can't dance. I'm not a dancer," or "I'm not good at sports. I didn't grow up playing a lot of sports." But then just that simple shift, maybe I can. Perhaps I can. Starting small, those little shifts. I'm trying to think of with even parenting or mental health. I'm not a gym person. I hear that a lot. Like, I can't do that. That's just not my personality to wake up early. I can't do
Mhm.
that. Or with parenting, maybe I catch myself saying this a lot. I just don't like those young stages, and I just don't wanna sit on the floor playing games with them. I'm just too busy. I can't do any other thoughts that kinda come to mind
Well,
that you've heard people?
so we all have these parts of our brain that are survival brain that are absolutely sure of something that's always judging. And we all have the parts of the brain that are the resourceful parts of the brain. And to tap into the resourceful parts of the brain, you're curious, you're thinking about having fun. Another thing to say to oneself is, how can I make this fun? How can I make this into a game? So for sitting down on the floor, it's like, I know I normally don't like this, but let's see if I can do this for 5 minutes and how I feel after 5 minutes. And
Yeah.
so you're not thinking then about the time you're wasting on the floors with a 2-year-old where you could be whatever it is that the most important things, but you're thinking about making a game out of this. I'm going to see if I can do this for 5 minutes and how I feel after the 5 minutes. So that's another technique. How can I make this more fun? What would I most want to happen here? What could I be curious about? Another kind of game is I wonder if in 5 minutes I can really connect with this person. And so in that case, like you're having an argument with your kid because your kid isn't doing his or her homework, right? Or they're not practicing the piano or whatever it is that they're not doing. And you're going to get into this fight. It's like something forgetting about the homework or the practice. How could I talk to this person for 5 minutes and just connect? What questions could I ask that would allow us to connect? And then from connection, you could go into, gee, I wonder, what are you thinking about homework tonight? What are you thinking about piano right now? But you're already connected. And it's not so much that it's you against them, but it's you and them against the issue that you're both facing.
Yeah. I really like that because when we break it down into smaller things, we can look at it in a different way, hence the mind shift. Those are things I hadn't necessarily thought about. Yes, I love making things into games, like that playful part of me that really speaks to that. But even just those micro goals, like, can I connect in 5 minutes? Can I be curious? Like, I'm thinking again of my youngest son has more energy and he's a lot for the youngest compared to my other children. And there's that barrier there where it's just like sometimes at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, why even try? And I know I'm not
Right.
alone in that. A lot of parents feel that way. Saying those out loud helps, but I'm trying to even think my own situation. What game would make that feel realistic for me? Any other ideas for
Well,
parents that are just like, oh, I don't know.
so it could be like, and I'm sure you do this with your clients. We're talking as if this is new for you, but you do this all the time. Another game could be, I wonder if I could respond with calm and curiosity 5 times.
Yeah.
And so if you respond 5 times and you're still butting heads, it's like, well, I got a chance to practice it 5 times. Next time, I'm going to see if I can do it for 7 times. By the time you're doing it for 10 times, we have these mirror neurons, right? Without even thinking about it, we're reading the affectations of the other person and we have this to copy them. So if the other person is picking up that you're curious and interested in them and you're connecting with them, over time, they're going to want to be doing the exact same things.
I love that. That does break it down in a better way. Let's shift to this next one if you're okay with it.
Sure.
Same thing, but for people that are really wanting to start maybe a miracle morning routine. There's a variety of different ones, but they want to start in the morning because they find, you know what, evenings, afternoons, it always interferes. But they just, I'm not a morning person. I never have had success before. I don't think this is going to work, but I really want to live with more intentionality. I want to have some movement, maybe do some reading or journaling. They want to do these things like the books talk about. What would you say to them?
In the books, there's probably 100 different things to try.
Yeah.
One of the things to try is what I call the next step, which is a really small thing that I really could do for a period of time. So, of all the different things that I could do to have a miracle morning, I could journal, I could work out. What's one that I could do for 2 minutes in the morning?
Yeah.
Let me try that for a week and see what happens. If you fall off once, well, you know something, you've done it 6 out of 7 times or 5 out of 7 times that you wouldn't have done if you hadn't made up your mind. So you don't beat yourself up for not meeting the 7 times. You did more than you would have done if you hadn't decided to do it. And you've made some progress. And the next week you say, do I want to continue with that? Do I want to add something? Was that too much? Do I want to subtract from it? And so you're just considering what you can do in that next step rather than think, oh, I have to have a miracle morning, but I'm not a morning person. What am I going to do?
Yeah, that does help. Celebrating those wins, breaking it down into small parts instead of just writing, okay, here's my list of 15 things I'm going to do perfectly every morning.
Yep.
I love it.
And they say you can only really work on one or two things at a time, anyhow. You have to build them into habits before you can go on to the next things. So having a list of 10 things that you're going to be doing, it's almost like you're designing this to fail. It's like, okay, so what's the one thing that I can do? Let me practice that and feel good about that, maybe adjust it. And then after 3 weeks, after a month, what's the next thing that I want to do?
Thank you for spending this time investing in your own fulfillment. Every inner shift you make is a gift to your whole family. If today's conversation spoke to you, head to fulfillmenttherapy.org to explore one-on-one coaching and start creating a more balanced, joyful life with support tailored to you. We'll see you back here soon for part 2.